U.S. presidents who served in war as of 2024, of the 45 men who have held the position of President of the United States, 31 have served in the armed forces. Most didn't see combat, though others experienced the heat of battle firsthand. These are just a few of the men who served in the armed forces before sitting in the Oval Office. John F. Kennedy, after graduating from Harvard in 1940, John F. Kennedy, using his father's influence to bypass his numerous medical issues, was assigned to Naval Intelligence until 1942, when Ensign Kennedy was able to join officers' training school and would eventually be promoted to lieutenant junior grade and given a command of a small wooden-hulled patrol boat. In 1943, Kennedy, as well as the rest of the crew of PT-109, were assigned to the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific. In August of 1943, PT-19 and the rest of the squadron of 15 patrol boats were sent to intercept Japanese warships operating in the area. On August 2nd, at around 2 a.m., Kennedy saw the silhouette of an approaching ship. Moments later, PT-19's crew realized in horror that it was not a fellow PT boat, but the oncoming Japanese destroyer Imagiri at full steam. The destroyer rammed into PT-109, the impact cutting the tiny patrol boat in half. Burning fuel was left in the wake of the Imagiri as the patrol boat floundered. The 11 survivors clung to the wreckage as long as possible. Drifting towards an uninhabited island, they would abandon ship and swim 3.5 miles to the island and hope for rescue. In spite of his back injury, Kennedy dragged a wounded crewman, clenching the strap of his life jacket in his teeth. Lacking food on this island, the crew would then swim to another island, with Kennedy once again hauling the wounded man with his teeth. Kennedy and another crewman then swam to Norion, looking for supplies. Returning, the crew of PT-109 survived on their meager findings, until they encountered a pair of locals that worked as scouts for the Allied forces. Scrolling a note on the husk of a coconut, the message was delivered, and the crew was rescued shortly afterwards. For his heroism, Kennedy was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal. Due to his deteriorating health, he would be discharged from the Navy in 1944. Jimmy Carter began his naval career during the height of the Second World War, entering the Naval Academy in June of 1943. Because of wartime demands, the curriculum was accelerated and 4 years of training was squeezed into 3, though the war ended before Carter saw combat. Graduating from the Academy in 1946, Carter was assigned to the USS Wyoming, and later, the USS Mississippi died. After 2 years, Carter transferred to the submarine fleet, serving aboard the USS Pomfret, before being assigned to the newly built K-1, one of the newest ships in the Navy after the Second World War. In 1952, he requested a transfer to the fledgling Nuclear Submarine Division branch. In this role, the future 39th president learned the ins and outs of nuclear technology when disaster nearly struck. At this time, Canada's Chalk River Nuclear Research Facility experienced a power surge, which partially damaged their reactor. Carter was sent to help contain the damage. Working in groups of 3, he would be lowered into the reactor and would work frantically during the allotted 90 seconds to clear the radioactive material. In spite of the precautions, Carter and his fellow workers were exposed to high levels of radiation, which persisted for months after the cleanup effort. Carter was then in line for a newly commissioned nuclear submarine, though the death of his father caused him to resign from the Navy at the rank of lieutenant. No one wants to suffer hair loss, not even the president, and that's where our sponsor comes in, who 200 years ago would have come massively in handy. Keeps is an online subscription service that makes it easy and affordable to treat hair loss from home. You don't need to visit a doctor's office or pharmacy. Just complete an online consultation, and you'll be matched with a treatment plan tailored specifically to bring back your self-esteem. One thing we love about Keeps is how convenient it is. You get your treatment delivered right to your door in discreet packaging. Plus, they offer flexible delivery options every 3, 6, or 12 months. You can adjust, pause, or cancel your plan anytime. And it's all about what works best for your schedule. Keeps treatments are clinically proven to work. They offer FDA-approved options to prevent hair loss and stimulate hair growth, as well as hair-thickening shampoo and conditioner. Most guys start seeing results within 6 months, and you can too. Keeps is all about making a confident new you, having helped over 1 million men reclaim their identity by addressing hair loss. With over 5,000 5-star reviews, Keeps is a trusted solution for many. Thanks to Keeps for sponsoring this video. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off a 3-month plan, go to keeps.com/simplehistory or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/simplehistory. George H.W. Bush. The 41st president, George H.W. Bush, joined the Navy on his 18th birthday, commissioned as an ensign and qualified pilot days before his 19th birthday, making him the youngest pilot in the U.S. Navy. He was then stationed on the carrier USS San Jacinto, flying the Grumman Avenger torpedo bomber. His first taste of combat happened in the spring of 1944, with operations against the Japanese holdings on Wake and Marcus Island. Later, near Saipan, Bush's plane experienced mechanical trouble shortly after takeoff, forcing a water landing, foreshadowing his future. Near the island of Chichijima, in the western Pacific, Bush's squadron attacked a formation of Japanese ships. Coming under heavy anti-aircraft fire, Bush released his payload and then made his way back home, though the Japanese scored several hits on the slow-moving torpedo plane. With the engine on fire, there was no choice but to bail out of the stricken plane. He and another crewman jumped out, but the third man chute failed to open. Bush would flounder in an inflatable raft for hours, until picked up by a submarine, the USS Finback. He would spend a month aboard the sub, helping to rescue other aviators until being transferred back to the San Jacinto. While there is no doubt that Bush felt relief after being rescued, this feeling could have only increased after he learned the fate of the others he flew with. During the mission, 9 servicemen had bailed out from their aircraft. The others would be captured by the Japanese. As PLs, they would be beaten, tortured, and eventually beheaded. In the book Flyboys by historical detective James Bradley, using evidence from war crime trials, it's revealed that after their execution, 4 of the men were cannibalized by the Japanese, their livers and thigh meat eaten as, quote, good medicine for the stomach, end quote. Bush was the only one of the 9 to avoid capture. In all, Bush flew 58 combat missions, earning him the Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 air medals, and the Presidential Unit Citation as part of the San Jacinto's crew. And he would be discharged from the Navy in September 1945, making him the last U.S. president to have served in a combat role to date. Harry S. Truman, first joined the military in 1905. Re-enlisting in 1917, when the U.S. entered World War, serving as lieutenant in the 2nd Missouri Field Artillery. This unit was called up for federal service, and on August 5, 1917, the unit became the 129th Field Artillery of the 35th Division, and the future president was given command of Battery D under his leadership. The unit was trained to exacting standards and was soon able to dismantle, move, reassemble, and accurately fire their howitzers more efficiently than any other unit in the regiment. Truman, as well as the rest of the 129th, was shipped off to France and participated in the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Under Truman's leadership, Battery D spent the remaining months of the war supporting American advances and exchanging fire with their German counterparts. At one point, an American plane marked the positions of a German battery, and Truman ordered his men to engage. Though this was outside of his area of responsibility, a decisive action that no doubt saved many lives. In another incident, German counterfire bracketed Battery D, dropping a shell within 15 feet of Truman, who rallied the men, keeping them from fleeing, and then returned fire. When the war finally ended, Battery D had suffered only 3 casualties. But they were on detached duties, and not a single man was wounded while under Truman's direct command. During his time in France, Captain Truman lost 20 pounds, but gained leadership experience, which would propel him through his political career. Gerald Ford, in the aftermath of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Gerald Ford put his aspiring political career on hold and joined the Naval Reserve, being commissioned an ensign on April 20th, 1942. He could have accepted a position stateside, but the future 38th president wanted to see frontline action and was assigned to gunnery training. After completing the necessary courses, he was stationed aboard the newly commissioned USS Monterey, a light aircraft carrier. Ford was given various duties, including acting as the assistant navigator and as the ship's fitness director. His most important role, however, was as leader of the anti-aircraft battery on the ship's fantail, which is the small deck at the stern of a carrier under the flight deck. On board the Monterey, Ford participated in campaigns around the Gilbert Islands, and later participated in operations around Truk, Saipan, Formosa, and the Philippines. The closest Ford came to disaster, however, was not from the Japanese, but from the Japanese. What from? The weather. Operating in the Philippine Sea, December of 1944, the Monterey was caught in Typhoon Cobra, a raging storm that lasted for 2 days. While the storm battered the ship, Ford lost his footing and was nearly swept overboard. Recovering, he had another issue to deal with. The tempest had caused several planes to come loose from the cables holding them in place and slid across the deck, causing several fires to break out. Wearing a gas mask to protect against the toxic fumes, Ford participated in fire control operations, including forming a human chain, passing buckets to douse the flame. The Monterey would survive, though it would be forced to dry dock for repairs, ending Ford's combat experience. He would stay in the Navy, earning the reserve rank of lieutenant commander, before being discharged from active service in 1946. These are just a few examples of presidents who, well before becoming the commander-in-chief, served in much more humble roles, putting themselves at risk to serve their nation.